Hi guys, hope everyone's well. So my name's Zainab and I recently did a podcast about being, I guess, picked on for being African. Like I said in my last video, I'm Nigerian from West London, around the Notting Hill area to be more specific. And in my last podcast, I basically just spoke about, when I started school, I went to school with a lot of Caribbean girls and they didn't really know much about being African, in which some quite harsh and mean comments were thrown around and said, but yeah, we're in 2018 and a lot has changed, but I do still feel like it is an important topic to talk about in terms of the divide between African and Caribbean people. I definitely think it is still an issue of today, but I think a lot of things have helped it change. And it can work both ways. It can be Caribbean vs people, like African people hating on Caribbeans and Caribbeans hating on African people. Obviously, I speak from an African perspective just because I can't really speak on the Caribbean's behalf because I'm not from the Caribbean. I feel a lot of Caribbean people can be, or were, I could say, speaking from my past experience, quite ignorant to Africans, just based on what was presented to them and the lack of education. For a lot of people, generally speaking, I can say, who don't know Africa or haven't been to Africa, they just view it as poverty. You see the adverts whereby there's flies on people's faces, people having to walk for miles for water, and you make a stereotype that that's all of Africa. But I can tell you firsthand, having lived in Nigeria to be specific and being African, that is not the case. Africa is a very beautiful place and it's filled with so much beauty that I think even sometimes when people see pictures nowadays of Africa, they're shocked to be like, wow, is that Africa? When to me, that's not wow, that's yes, that is Africa. So I feel like that's part of the reason why there has been quite a few negative stigmas towards Africans, just based on, what you see on TV, as well as the education system not really making any great reference to African history, whereby it's only focused on in terms of slavery and the slave trade. So again, that doesn't really highlight Africa's beauty, but instead focuses on the struggle, which is our heritage. In addition to that, I feel with some Caribbean people, it's fair to say that, like, they're not African. It's really just that simple. It's been a topic again that's been highlighted in like Love and Hip Hop Miami, and just Love and Hip Hop in general, whereby there are a lot of black women who aren't necessarily of African descent, or like they're Latino, and people don't understand that. And I think again that's sometimes where African people can go wrong, whereby we perceive that all Caribbean people's heritage are in fact African, whereby I'm sure somewhere down the road it is the case, but not all Caribbean people are African. I have a few friends who are Black Caribbean, but their heritage is West Indian, so they reside more from the Indian side, so they don't sit within the African part. So again, I think that's also something that's just generally not highlighted. Like, we just perceived that all Black people are African, which in my opinion, I'm sure even if it's 1% of you, there is definitely some form of African in you. But again, if you like look back to your heritage, etc., there are other parts of, just like, you're not just all Black and African, you do have other bits to your culture, which I think is an important thing to highlight. I just think it's just a level of ignorance. Again, like some some Black Americans they don't know where they're from, so they find it quite hard to accept that they're African American. So I think that can also tie back into the issue that I faced in school, whereby people just didn't know where they were from, so instead they just decided to be ignorant and just act like they didn't know Africa or have any acknowledgement for it. But that being said, I feel like slowly a lot of things have changed just because people are doing well in Africa. And I feel like just because people are doing well in Africa, that's why a lot of Caribbean people and people from all over the world just generally have more of an open heart to being African and Africans now. Like, I have a few friends who will tell me that they're from Nigeria, but back in the day they weren't claiming their heritage to be from Nigeria. But I think a lot of things have helped, music doing well, we have businesses booming over Africa, We have social entrepreneurs in Africa. Instagram has helped with the profile of people in Africa, and overall people are just being educated, in which it's allowing them to be a lot more open-minded and just learn a lot more. I don't know. It would be great to hear from a Caribbean person's point of view, like how Africans have been towards them, or why, as a Caribbean person, maybe if they were in the past reluctant to accept they were African, why that is or why that was. Because for me, I obviously being African, I just don't understand how you can't accept being African and the beauty of Africa. It's your heritage, it's your ancestors. Like, be proud. Yeah.